Welcome to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show, and thank you for being with us. Our topic, leadership, focuses on leaders such as yourselves. We believe that leadership is a skill that can be learned through practice and awareness. It is our hope that our conversation will help you become more reflective when it comes to your own leadership practices and enable you to leave a positive legacy. Our very special guest is Susanne Mueller. Susanne is originally from Switzerland but resides in New York City. Susanne has an MA in Organizational Development and Leadership and a BA in Psychology and an Executive Coaching Certificate from Columbia University. She worked for Swiss Airlines that allowed her to travel to 50-plus countries, followed by the Swiss mission to the United Nations and NASA in HR. Susanne is a global executive business coach focusing on leadership and performance and is also a facilitator for mindfulness coaching. To give back, Susanne has been a mentor for the Sherry Blair Women's Mentoring Program and stands beside them, assisting veterans integrating into civilian lives. Susanne is a certified running coach, completing the full Ironman triathlon distance in Lake Placid, New York, 26 marathon races, and is yogini. Susanne has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Susanne's book, Take It from the Iron Woman, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallel, published in 2017, is available on Amazon. Susanne is also a weekly blogger. Susanne, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Biana. Happy to be on the show.
Susanne, you're the CEO of the Susanne Mueller Executive Coaching and Global Consulting. Can you tell us more about your company?
Yeah, so I've been on my own for the past 8 years now. I like to be my own boss, so I do executive coaching with people from around the world. I made a list, and so far I have coached people from 60 different countries. So I have my business around the world, and mainly my business is online.
So for those of us who don't know what executive coaching is, can you tell us a little bit more what executive coaching entails and who is eligible to be coached under the executive coaching umbrella?
I think everybody is included. Everybody's an executive. Everybody's a leader. I have been working with many people who are high potential, so people who are eager to move up in their career ladder, but also people who are very curious. They want to move ahead. Some people are startup, and I think anybody is an executive. So it can be male or female. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
What I'm hearing, you don't have to be at a certain level in your career to be considered for executive coaching, correct?
Yeah, I think these days, like everybody thinks an executive needs to be like, Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. I think I like to talk to anybody who is curious and who has great aspirations. These are the people that are of my interest.
So on your company website, you talked about 5 steps to success. You mentioned that strategy, team building and training, evaluation, planning and execution, and success. Could you tell us more about each?
Sure. So maybe I'll give you a little background. I grew up in Switzerland and I've been always active. I'm an athlete. I've done the Ironman, but I call myself I'm the Iron Woman. And that basically gave me the idea of writing a book. And I feel that sports and business, we can see many parallels. So that's why I came up with those 5 steps. And in any venture, you need to have a strategy. Without a strategy, without a good plan, nothing will happen, right? So people say, if you have a dream, it will be a dream, but you need to have a plan with a deadline, and that's how you become successful. And then the other few items are the team building, and you need to have support. Without support, you're just one person in the organization. And as an athlete, you need to train every single day. And I think as a coach, as an executive coach, I also need to train and update my skills. Actually, next week, I'm going to the Harvard Coaching Conference in Boston, so I need to learn more. And with evaluation, this is sometimes a phase that people overlook. Halfway through a project, we want to evaluate, is this really what I want? Am I going in the right direction? So these are good questions to ask ourselves, and then we can reassess the situation and maybe change a few things, tweak a few things, and move in the directions towards success. And then with planning and execution, the P is that we can go full speed. We're ready. We have this go-getter attitude. We're ready for success. And obviously, success is the end stage, and we want to celebrate the success. A lot of people forget to celebrate successes, and those successes can be as small as getting a business card, finding a new client, or even calling up a client once a week. So smaller steps are also successes, in my opinion.
So what I'm hearing is when it comes to successes is to really celebrate and acknowledge those small milestones that are going to help you along the way to reach that big goal.
Yeah, not everybody needs to be, on top of Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro. So sometimes smaller successes are as important as big successes.
And you mentioned that community is very important when you start moving towards a career goal. What are your suggestions for the folks that might not have a support from family or their communities? How can they be successful in reaching their goals, or where can they find that support?
I think if people don't have support from friends or family, why not volunteer? Do something that is of your interest. In my case, I came to New York. I gave up my skiing for running. So I went to running class and I met many wonderful people who had the same interests that I did. So then I grew my circle of friends and also my circle of support there. And I think if you now maybe talk about New York, but around the world, you can find people who have the same interests as you do.
So you truly believe that you do need to have a community to be successful, right? One cannot do it alone.
With that. Yeah, one cannot do it alone. We always think we can do everything alone, but with a great support system, it's even easier.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned evaluation is very important, and if it's not working, you can easily hit the reset button. What would be the indicators that what you are going towards is not where you need to be?
Maybe I can give an easy example related to sports, right? So sometimes we sign up for a race as a runner and we get injured. So then we're like, okay, I might not be as fast as I was planning initially. So you guard a little bit your injury. You might have to step back a little bit, get a little slower, but you still reach your goal. And if you think in business, sometimes we build a prototype and then we realize, that's not really what I wanted. So you change the prototype. So nothing wrong with changing. I read the book of Herminia Ibarra. It's called Working Identities. And she says we should go out with a prototype. Not everything has to be 100% initially. And I fully agree with her because sometimes when we think it's 100%, it's not what the clients want.
So what you're saying to us, don't overdo it. But
yeah, sometimes we overdo and overthink, right? So sometimes I think it's important that we go with our intuition, with our gut feeling. If we have a thought, an idea, let's go for that. And don't listen to too many people sometimes. If it feels good for you, go for it.
So that's a very good, analogy. You're saying if it feels good to you, go for it. How do you, most of us are in our heads and thinking with our heads and getting feedbacks from others. How do you create that balance between listening to yourself and listening to others?
That's a very good question, right? I think it comes with a little bit of experience. Maybe you ask me the next question, how do we do it if we don't have the experience, right? Again, listen to other people, read what other people are saying, learn as much as you can, learn from others. But I would also say don't copy others, right? If you have your own idea, go with what your idea is.
So for those of us who never used the coach before, what does the coach do for one and how long should one use the coach?
I think everybody has had a coach maybe, and sometimes we don't even know that we had a coach. So a coach mainly is listening to you. A coach can be your sounding board. A coach can be brainstorm and strategize with you. So it can be sometimes a friend. My grandmother was a good coach, right? So she was a natural. She was always listening to everybody. But a professional coach, first of all, I would say it started in sports. Most of the sports teams have a coach. If you look at Olympians, if you don't have a coach, you don't become a medalist. But in the business world or even in the nonprofit world, a coach can be a guidance, again, a person who mainly listens. And if you ask me how long, I always say like as long as it takes, right? So some people want to have a coach just to guide them to get to one goal. I also see people in the business, they come for a specific question. Some people come for let's have a look at my LinkedIn profile, for example, or my resume. So we look at things, but then it also turns out that maybe people need to do more mentoring or networking. So sometimes you have a coaching relationship that can go on, I would say 3 months, 6 months, a year. A coach is not a therapist. So if people need some professional help as a coach, we refer them to therapists. I don't do therapy. Yeah, I think anybody can use a coach, and especially see millennials, they're very open. They love to have a coach. They love to ask questions. And I also like clients who have many questions, who are curious.
So what would be a good indication that the coach is a good fit?
Yeah, that's a very important question. A coach has to be really a good fit because it's almost like chemistry. If you're falling in love, there's something in chemistry is happening. If you don't like your coach, it's very difficult. It's also important that the client is open and authentic, and a good coach knows when the client is not open. You see or you feel that there is something missing or that the person are not authentic.
So what you're saying to us that it has to be a good fit on both sides, right?
Yeah, it's not so easy. I mean, like, I think I could coach anybody, but I feel most comfortable with people who are similar than I am. So people are curious, people who are world travelers, people are interested in sports, or people are maybe risk takers. I would say as an example, I had a person, very nice, lovely man. He was an accountant, but I don't think we were the best fit. So we did 2 or 3 sessions, and then he says, "Nah, I think I'm good." It seemed like there was just like not a good connection. And I think this is really important, that there is a super good connection between the coach and the client.
And that actually leads me to my next question. How much do you share with your coach? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, I think it's very important to know, I would say, like, to know your background, where you're coming from. And that's where I make a huge distinction between therapy and coaching. Typically in coaching, you do not go back like, tell me about your family and, this was bad and this is not so good. In coaching, you might ask, as an example, I had a client and he was the 5th child of 6 children in his family. So he was competitive and he was always rushing. But then because we knew he was the 5th person or the 5th child in the family, we knew that he always had to rush to the table and get food. Otherwise, the other kids would eat before him. So that's what we need to know. But we don't need to know anything that a therapist would need to know.
So what you need to know those little moments of one's life so that you can determine the behavior.
Yeah. And what I typically look at are high points and low points in a person's career. We can do like a lifeline. People can draw it. So people go to school, they learn, and then they might go to university. These are high points in their life. And then they get their first job. Maybe they lose a job. They get to the next job. So it's up and down in their lives. And that will help us in the coaching sessions. But it's typically we're looking forward in the coaching.
So there are many different coaches and many different coaching styles. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
I use positive psychology. So I use thinking or philosophy of focusing on the strengths. I do not like to focus again on the weaknesses of a person, because we can tweak a leader's strengths more so than the weaknesses. So I'm focusing a lot on the positive psychology, and I add appreciative inquiry to that. Appreciative inquiry is a module where we focus on discovery, dream, design, and destiny. So these are the 4 elements that we are working on. If people are interested, you find a lot of information if you Google it. But I think this is a wonderful tool where you can focus on the dreams of a person. And for some people, let's say if they're in finance, they might not want to talk about their dreams, but we can also talk about their goals.
So dreams in terms of like, what are your goals?
Yeah, what are your goals and aspirations? Maybe a person in the business likes to talk more about their aspirations, but I've also seen people who are, let's say, in finance, they like to talk about their dreams. Everybody has dreams.
And could you talk a little bit more about positive psychology?
So positive psychology has been around, I want to say, since the 70s, and experiments have been done with people coming back from overseas assignments. And typically that integration for them is not so easy. But when they did experiments, they found out when they asked positive questions, and again, focusing on strengths, that their reintegration was much easier than focusing, oh, you're a bad person, we don't want this, we don't want that, but rather to say like, oh, tell me about an experience that you had and where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 or 5 years. So it's about looking forward, looking into something positive. And maybe I have an example here that was eye-opening to many people. Mm-hmm. I have been coaching at New York University in their coaching certification program, and we were talking about dreams. And there was a lady who was volunteering in a psychiatric ward, and we were using that module with like focusing on dreams. And she came back a week later to our class and said, wow, it was a huge revelation. So she asked that question to people with schizophrenia, what is your dream? And the person said to her, thank you so much. Nobody has ever asked me about my dreams and the future. So it seems as if, even a person with a dire situation like that can have dreams, and we should not forget about that.
It's kind of very striking because we do tend to marginalize people who have some psychological and we don't think that they might have dreams. That's a very interesting. Yeah. So going back to your book, I know you mentioned that you wrote a book. You actually wrote 2 books. Both of them are available on Amazon. And I actually had a chance to read your book called Professional Coaching Using Sports Strategies. And what I liked about the book, that you offered few ways that you can evaluate your leadership. And they were by using SWOT analysis, the GROW model, SMART goal setting, and also you talked about positive psychology, among many others. Can you a little bit talk to us about each, what SWOT analysis is, the GROW model, SMART goal setting?
So I think the SMART might be the easiest to explain. A lot of people in the business are using it for setting goals. So S is setting specific goals, M is for measurable goals, A is for achievable goals, R is for realistic, and T is for timely goals. Maybe I give an example. So if we set a goal for a salesperson, I want to be better by the end of the year, that's not actually measurable. So if we say, I want to meet 2 clients every week until the end of the week, that's measurable. And then we have to ask the question, is it achievable? Is it realistic? I think those are realistic. So this is a very easy way to set good goals, right? So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And the T, the timely, I think is the most important. If you say, I call 2 clients every week, we're like, all right. But set a time limit, a realistic time limit, so you can push yourself a little bit. And as a coach, what I typically do, I hold the people accountable for. Because sometimes when you're alone, you're like, I don't feel like making a call today. I'll do it tomorrow. There's always a tomorrow, right? And in Spanish, they say, mañana does not always mean tomorrow. So we can postpone it until, 2 years from now, and we don't reach our goal. So put always a time limit to whatever you're doing. I think that's the best advice I've ever gotten from somebody.
And also, if you feel that you're not reaching your time limit, I guess change the goal, right?
Sure, totally. And that's what I mean with evaluation, right? So if you think like, it's too aggressive, reassess and say like, hey, I want to be authentic. I want to be honest with myself. Reassess. It's like driving a car. If you think like, oh, I'm going too fast, let me go to a side street. I have maybe a little more time. I can dream a little bit. That's fine. But reassessing the situation is always very important.
So talking about assessments, you also talked in the book about 360-degree feedback. Can you tell us a little bit what the 360 feedback is?
Yeah. So obviously in math, it's like we see feedback from around us. And around us means like typically the manager, peers, so people are on the same level, maybe somebody who has a team, people who are reporting to us. And then sometimes we can also ask clients, can be clients on the inside or the outside of the organization. Mm-hmm. And some people even extend it to family or friends. But we have to be a little careful that we don't include the fan club. Because if we ask the fan club or the people that love us, oh, that person is really good. So we don't get the critical feedback that we need for our growth.
That's very interesting. I never heard anyone talking about not including the fan club.
If you get the fan club, they always say good things about you, right? And then you're like, oh, I'm the best person. I don't have to improve. So I think it's very relevant that you are asking people who give honest feedback.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that you talked in your book is what are your big five in life? Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about that concept a little bit?
Yeah, so that's an interesting concept that we focus on 5 goals that we want. And in the book, I think my big 5 are the ready. So you come up with an acronym and I was like, I'm always ready. I'm always on the go. I'm a runner. So ready came to my mind so that I would like to read. I would like to eat. I like adventures. And D, I think, was for the discovery. And the why was like, why not, right? So having very active goals. But also to me, it's to have maybe some crazy goals that initially I think like, is that possible? Maybe, why not try, right? So in that respect, maybe I'm more of a risk taker, but I don't think I'm such a huge risk taker. I would not want to do bungee jumping. So I think I take calculated risks.
Interesting. So what this would do for one, it help one understand him or herself better so that it can be used for any type of other goal that they want to set, right?
Sure. And it's a very easy read. Strzelecki is his name. So very easy to read and fun activity to do.
Got it. And I guess if you can just a little bit, I think I mentioned SWOT analysis and I use it definitely in my organization. Can you talk to our audience what SWOT analysis is and why is it so important to use in the organization?
Yeah, so we can use it in the organization as well as maybe for a person. So S is for strength, the W is for weakness, O is for opportunity, and T is for threat. So in an organization, you look at what are your strengths, but then also where are your shortcomings and where are your weaknesses. But the O I like a lot, especially in coaching. Where are your opportunities? Where can you grow? Where can you take the next big step? And then obviously the threat, sometimes it's as easy as it's the competition or sometimes also a friend next to us. So we shouldn't make it too dramatic when we take it for a person, but I think it's a helpful tool to assess a situation.
And would you be able to give us an example of SWOT analysis?
Yeah, so maybe we look at myself, right? So I think my strength lays in coaching and guiding people and, leading people. Weaknesses, I always say, like, don't put me in a finance or accounting department because I might not be so happy there. Opportunities are I could do the work, I could learn, but the threat, I think, for an organization would be that I would not be very happy or engaged employee in an organization.
Interesting.
That might be like a very specific example for an organization. I think they use it more with finance, but if you look at for a person, that might be an example.
And then just going back to talk about the GROW model. Can you tell us a little bit more about the GROW model?
Yeah, the GROW model is by Sir John Whitmore. He initially was a race car driver, so a person who took many risks, right? Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. Big role model for all of us coaches. And the GROW model is actually a very practical model. So you focus on the goals. You focus on the reality where you are now. And that's a very good point. Like sometimes people are just rushing into the future, but it's about where are you now? And then the O, again, is opportunities. And the W is the will or the want. Like what can we do? How much of a will do you have? And when will you do that? So again, a very practical approach for guiding the client to the next level.
So these two books, again, Susanne, they are available on Amazon. We obviously talked about professional coaching using sports strategists right now, but that you also wrote Take It from the Iron Woman Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. So they're available on Amazon only, or you can buy them on any other platforms?
They're on Amazon as a paperback or as an ebook.
Got it. All right, great. So I know that you recently published a very interesting article called Appreciation of Strength on LinkedIn. And I was wondering if you can share a little bit what was the inspiration behind writing an article and the article about the article itself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm writing a weekly blog, and my blog is always updated or uploaded on the LinkedIn platform. I have seen that through that platform, I get a good exposure. And my motivation, again, was the VIA Character Strength Assessment is focused on strengths, on positives. And this assessment is free assessment that you can take online, and you get 20 character traits that you have. And my first 5 are leadership, love of learning, zest of life, and also appreciation for beauty. And I think this describes me very well. Love of learning, certainly. I'm focusing always on lifelong learning. I think if people don't learn, they die a little bit, in my opinion. So I think it's important that we always learn if we want to show our best. So this was my motivation to share with the world what the VIA Character Strength Assessment can do for them.
Interesting. And I definitely agree that learning does move you forward. Right.
Yeah.
So in addition to having a very successful coaching business, you also work with Asian Leadership Institute Consultancy. And we talked a little bit before the show that you're using 3C program and also are doing mindful coaching. Can you talk to us about that part of your work?
Yeah, sure. That's actually my favorite part of my work. So I joined the Asian Leadership Institute in 2015. And it's all about mindfulness. It's actually having 3 people in the room. And in the room, I mean a virtual room. So we use Zoom or Skype to connect 3 people. And then we have 9 modules. First, we introduce ourselves, right? That's one module. Then we have consciousness, personality, observer, emotions, expansion versus contraction, communication, intuition, and then integration. So these are 9 modules that we're talking about. And what I love about that work is it's modern, right? So it's blended learning. You have a platform, you have a forum, and each time before the module, before we meet, we have 90-minute sessions with each other. People can post their answers on that platform, and the 3 people who are on board for that journey can each reach each other's answers that they have. And then during the call, we answer, or we ask some questions, we answer. And also, it's interesting that sometimes those 3 people don't know each other so well, but by the end of the 9 modules, we really know each other, we're open, we learn a lot, we give each other feedback. And 3C means coaching, collaboration, and communication. So it's really focusing on those 3 components.
And coaching and collaboration and communication are very important, right? For any type of work.
Yeah, and it's actually for a business, right? So people can focus on that. And when we have, and we call it triad because we have 3 people in the room, those 3 people can also coach each other. So they learn a little bit about coaching. They learn about how to collaborate and communicate much better with each other. It goes cross-functional and also cross-geographical regions. It's really a fantastic program.
And what are the benefits that people have experienced by being part of the program or the coaching?
I think they learn a lot about themselves. Sometimes people think, oh, it's a leadership program in an organization. I've done many. But this is really focusing on also practicing. Because if you go into a leadership program, let's say a 2-day class, you go in, you're like, ooh, this is fantastic. I learn a lot. The next day you go to the office and there's so many fire drills. You're like, whew, then you forget all about the leadership program. But with the 9 modules, we typically have 9, maybe 12 weeks together, right? So you get to know each other. You have to do some homework. you upload it on that platform. And you also have to commit to practices. Mm-hmm. And practice can be as simple as, for me, that's what I learned mostly. I have to do monotasking rather than multitasking. So I really focus on very simple example, having 4 windows open rather than my 15, 20 initially. And I'm really good at that. And I'm also happy to see the improvement on myself that I've seen. So sometimes, as I said initially, little things can be great successes for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you also mentioned something very interesting that I have experienced. You go to these amazing seminars and take part in this amazing coaching and training. But then, yes, you do go back to work and the situations happen and then everything goes out the window. How can one maintain and continue to utilize what you learned?
That's a very difficult question, right? So we have seen with the Asian Leadership Institute, because that program is like 9 modules, so it's at least 9 weeks, if not longer. Sometimes we have very busy leaders, so we cannot always schedule once a week. And that gives us the opportunity to focus on practicing something different every week, I would say. So sometimes we have like listen more, delegate more. And then when we have those calls, I, as a coach and facilitator, I check in. How did that go? Not so good might be the answer. We as a team, we're asking, well, how can you make it better? So you have actually 3 people giving you feedback during those 90-minute calls. So
that's how you actually continue to stay in the conversation.
Yes. So it's about the continuing efforts, the practices. And when you look at sports, it's about training, it's about endurance, it's about the stamina. So you have to train. And we know that changing behaviors takes 66 days now. So it's a long time if we want to change behaviors. And we might, unfortunately, always fall back into old behaviors.
And what would be the cause for falling back?
Well, sometimes you get frustrated, right? With my example of the multitasking. There are days when I'm like, I can't accomplish anything. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? So then with knowing about the mindfulness, I'm like, okay, today might not be the day where I am most productive. So I go for a walk. Actually, as a solo entrepreneur, you have sometimes the luxury of going for a walk. But if you don't have the luxury to go for a walk, just go outside or walk around the office, talk to somebody. So just stop what you're doing and acknowledge that maybe today is not the best day. And it's okay to be a little frustrated, but then the next day, you're much better.
So what I'm hearing is that you have to be very in tune within yourself and also make very frequent check-ins and acknowledge when you're not moving in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, and be honest with ourselves, right? So we're not a machine, we're a human being, and there are good days and there are bad days.
So I'm going to segue a little bit into cross-cultural awareness. Why is that so important, Susan?
Well, I think, first of all, I live in New York City, right? And I think this is one of the most diverse places that you can be. When you take the subway as an example, you see people from all around the world. Everybody has a different story. But the thing that is important to me, it's about being open to different cultures, but also be curious about different cultures and appreciate those different cultures.
And why do you think it's so important that organizations are hiring more diverse groups?
It's probably very simple because diverse people have different ideas. So they bring in more curiosity, more innovation to the organization, and everybody wants to be innovative, right? So if you always have the same people, everybody looks the same, feels the same, then innovation is a little harder to obtain.
And you also have a certificate in intercultural readiness check, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting certification. I don't like to say testing, but assessing, let's say, people who go on an assignment to a different country. And mainly what it is testing, it's about how can people be okay with ambiguities, right? So we focus on communication, interaction, team building. But one of the most important factors is like, how can you deal with ambiguities, like when not everything is working so well, when you have, let's say, there's no internet, what do you do? Okay, there might be no internet for 5 minutes. It's okay. People get very stressed out, but what's the worst that can happen, right? So you have a coffee with somebody, you talk, you laugh a little bit, and when the internet comes back, you're okay. So it's not the end of the world. But some people don't feel so comfortable. I think it's people don't feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
So this leads me to my next question, which is how do you deal with uncomfortable and how do you make that uncomfortable more comfortable?
Yeah, that's a multi-million-dollar question that everybody's asking me. I think it has to do with being authentic, with being honest, and also not taking ourselves so serious, right? So what if something does not work? Okay, what is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? How can we make it happen and everybody is happy? So it's little things that we as a leader, maybe one thing I can add is like a leader needs to be there in a difficult situation. A leader needs to show up and a leader should not be stressed out, right? So a leader has to be calm and be composed. But initially, really, people have to be authentic and open.
And this, of course, leads me to my next question, which I think you already answered it, but maybe you can add to it. Are there any traits that leader needs to have to be a truly great leader?
Yeah, I think it's, again, what I said, it's being authentic, being open, being curious. And a leader needs to be a very good listener. So almost a leader is like a coach. Listen, and we can also say the leader needs to feel the temperature that there is, and it has to do with the culture and the value of the organization.
So what you're saying to us, leader needs to align his or her vision towards the beat of organization, right?
Exactly, and not the other way around, right? So obviously a leader, they have a lot of responsibilities, but they also want to make sure that people want to work with them and that the leader needs to create followership, and not followership in terms of Facebook or Instagram followers, but people that say, like, I want to work on her team. She's a great leader or he's a great leader. So that there is something that people really want to work with that person.
So you are a great coach and obviously have coached many people in your career. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on language and leader being highly in tune to what kind of words he or she use? And why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, it's almost like in music, you need to harmonize, right? So it's very important that the leader understands the nuances, the different cultures. If you ignore the different culture, then you're not a good leader. So I always feel like, maybe going back to my blog that I wrote about appreciation, we want to appreciate where we are and we want to appreciate the diversity of the culture we're in. And there's always something positive, right? Even if you feel like, I don't feel so good, there must be something positive that you can see around you.
So this leads me to my next question, which is, what are your thoughts on generosity in leadership?
I think everybody needs to be very generous, and generosity, sometimes people think it's just monetary, but I think generosity can also be like saying thank you, being friendly to people, and again, being open.
And do you believe that being assertive helps you lead people better?
Probably yes and no. I think sometimes you need to be assertive. If you have to go through difficult times, you have to deliver a difficult message, and that's not always easy for a leader. But when I coach leaders who are in difficult situations, I advise them to repeat the message, and sometimes they just have to take the emotions away. And I hope I can make myself understand very clear that you deliver the message and you say, we know it's a hard time, we all get through this together. So not that you breaking down in a way, but that you feel for the people and that you are together with the people.
So sometimes teams fail to produce results. Do you think when that happens, it's leaders' responsibility or it's on team?
I think it can be both, right? So it's important that the leader sets expectations early on. If you start to work on a project, set clear expectations. Leader has to repeat the message many times. But also, I think as a leader, it's important to check in And that's that point, that evaluation point, that you check in if you work on a project or even if you are just on any given day to check in with the people. How is it going? Where do you need help? How can I help? So that you know what's going on. Again, that's the checking the temperature. In terms of team, sometimes you don't have people who are very motivated, right? So you need to work with those people and you need to be assertive. So as a leader, you cannot always be everybody's friend. That's, I think, one of the most difficult parts of being a leader.
So what you're saying to us, you have to maintain a certain level of boundaries so that you can lead others effectively.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you need to set boundaries. But it doesn't mean that you cannot be friendly with people, but you need to set boundaries of like, okay, up to here, but as a leader, you have a lot of responsibilities that you might not be able to share, or you might have some confidential information that cannot go to the team.
So do you believe that all leaders are also good managers?
No, I don't think so. I would say that the managers are the people who are, let's say, following like a project plan, timeline. They're very good at follow up, follow through. And leaders sometimes are good at that too. But typically leaders also have a component of visionary. So they're like, let's do this. They can inspire people and they can also motivate people.
So what you're saying to us, leader is more of a sort of that visionary and manager is more of a doer of implementing that vision, right?
In simple terms, yeah. Obviously, there's so much more work to it. But yes, I would agree with that.
And what are your thoughts on delegating responsibilities?
I think that's a huge part also when you coach, especially high potentials, right? People who are new in a leadership role. Delegation is always like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. Well, sometimes I give them an exercise to do, an activity that they have to think, what would people do if they were not there? And it's kind of like a light bulb that goes up and they're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So delegation means also like empowering the people to come up with a solution, and that they will come with a recommendation all the times when they have a question for the leader.
So obviously, when you have people that are on board with you and you have a great working relationship, then delegating is easier. What are your thoughts on dealing with the difficult employees or employees that are sort of on a different beat than you are?
I think that's the hardest, right, for a leader. In a way, we have to think that sometimes a leader comes new into an organization and you cannot pick the team. So people are there already, so you have to work with the people. But it's about setting clear expectations, great communication, and also, you know, what we do with the 3C. It's about coaching, collaboration, and communication.
So you always go back to 3Cs to reestablish connection.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, it's all about communication. If you are a good leader, if you're in front of the people, if you communicate well, what's not to like about that leader, right? But I think people sometimes, they're just like, not everybody can be happy in any given job. So some people are just ready to move on.
And it's okay, in your opinion, to let him go and not feel guilty about it.
I think so. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's also that the people should be honest with themselves. If they don't like their job, there are opportunities out there in the world that they can change their career, they can change the job. And yes, even in difficult times, it is possible to change the job. It might not be possible within 1 to 3 months, but if you set realistic and timely goals, let's say within 6 months, I think it is possible. And that's why maybe I would like to add here, if people think like, I want to change my job now, you know, make sure that you have a good network, a network that can help you when you are looking for a job, that network is there, not that you think like, oh, I can reach out to a person and they give me a job tomorrow. This is a lot of work and you need to take care of your network as well.
So that's very interesting. Thank you for bringing it up. What you're saying to us, don't just make sudden decisions. Ensure that everything is sort of ready for that transition, right?
Yeah, it takes, I mean, first of all, it takes a lot of courage to leave when you're not so happy. But again, I think you need to be honest with yourself where you want to see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years. Where is that happy place? I think we spend a lot of time at work, so make sure that you are satisfied with what you're doing. Otherwise, you have to change. And get a coach, right? Get a coach to help you. Maybe that's an easy way to get to the next level.
And, this leads me to my next question, which is sometimes we get scared and the fear kicks in that dream will never come. And then we set for goals or jobs that were similar to what we had before in terms of the culture and environment. What are your thoughts when someone wants to jump too soon into something that might not be a good fit because of the fear?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that can happen, right? So these days, I think people tend to leave careers every 2 to 3 years, which is okay. Years ago, everybody was staying in one job for the whole career. I think times have changed a little bit, but I think to the younger people, I would recommend just take any opportunity you find and make sure that you are happy with what you're doing. And if you're not happy, change, but don't change every 3 months, right? So, I mean, it takes, I would say, like 3 to 6 months to get comfortable in an organization, and don't give up too soon.
So what you're saying to us, even when you start the job, if it's not the most pleasant experience at the beginning, don't go jumping into another opportunity because this particular opportunity is scaring you where you're at.
I think so, yeah. So give it a chance, right? I mean, we see a lot of organizations and they say people leave after 60 to 90 days, but give yourself that time and learn something. And we can also learn from difficult situations. So don't give up if you don't like the job after 2 months.
And any thoughts on how to stay humble while leading others?
I think it goes back to being open, and being open means also that you get to know the people who work for you and with you, that you come across as a human being and not that you are the slave driver and say, we have to do this. You're just like, be a little more playful. And it doesn't mean that you're not assertive and you have goals in mind, but being humble means that you appreciate people, what they do. A thank you always goes a long way. And be mindful with people and ask questions like, how do you feel today? I heard a good question. They say, how are you growing today? Maybe that's a new question we should be asking, especially in the US when we ask, how are you? Nobody's listening because that's basically saying hello, right? So if you're in the US, maybe ask a different question like, how's your family? How was your weekend? So be a little more creative when it comes to asking questions.
So what you're saying to us, show a genuine care for an employee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So I really like that you talked a lot about being authentic. And my next question is, do you believe that being authentic and genuine helps you when you're making unreasonable requests upon your team?
I think so, yeah. I was once coaching a lady and she was working on a project for 26 hours. Like they had a deadline. And when I was coaching her, I said to her, you look very tired today. She's like, yeah, we just worked for 26 hours nonstop. But then she said they were in a beautiful office and they saw the sun rising. And she said everybody was laughing and having a good time. So she, as the leader, was there with the team. So it's about bonding and, just being with the people.
So what the leader did, he also invested time to be with them. He didn't just let them be by themselves throughout that experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think and I refer that in my book, Take It from the Iron Woman, it's about time, trust, and commitment of the leader. And I think these days we forget about the time factor. People are always rushing and they don't communicate so much with each other anymore. And the trust factor is you can only build trust over time. So it's about building the time, trust, and commitment with the team and towards the team.
And I really like that you talked about over time. So people should be patient with others, what you're saying to us, to build that trust, time, and commitment, right?
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. You cannot buy trust, right? So it's not like a bottle of water. You have to build that time and trust over time.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say, because obviously you're an expert on coaching, what would you say, what would be the time limit that you said, I really invested in this particular person and we are not experiencing that connection? Is there like a time limit that you can say, okay, well, that's not working out?
Yeah, I think that there should be. Initially, I usually set up a contract, and for private clients, there's usually like 12 sessions. But there's also like that trust factor. If you see that the engagement is not there, maybe the client is canceling all the time, you need to have an honest talk, and sometimes it's a brutal talk, right? So you're not accountable, you're always late or something. So you need to talk to the client, and if it doesn't feel good, it's just not the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And this leads me to my next question, which we obviously know that communication is a key to effective leadership. Can you add something more to it?
Yeah, I think these days I hear a lot of people say we're communicating, but when I ask them, how do you communicate? They say email, text, or Facebook Messenger, or whatever other social media platforms they have. I think a communication should be also in person. Don't forget about that. So it's face-to-face, telephone. And sometimes it's also good to have a video conference. So you see the people, and especially when you work with different cultures, it's good to see each other. You can see the body language as well.
And any thoughts on how clarity and curiosity impacts leadership?
Yeah, I think as a leader, you need to be curious. And without it, you just become like a machine, right? So you're not a cool person, I would say. If you're not curious, you stay in your little cube or office and you just let the life or the work go by like a movie and you don't interact.
Mm-hmm. And how does media affect the leader? Do you think that media positively affects the leader or can negatively affect the leader and his or her leadership style?
Yeah, I think these days there's so much media, right? So I think as a leader, we need to be cognizant of what is important to us. We need to filter, we need to sift through. Not everything is important. I think the personal interaction is more important than all the information and media that is bombarding us these days.
And what is your leadership style?
My leadership style, I would say it's inclusive. So I like to collaborate. I like to coach. And I don't like to have a title. You know, anybody can be a leader. And if you work in a team, people can take on leadership. Maybe one person takes on leadership for a specific, say, department or chapter, and then another time another person can take on leadership. So I think it should be a collaboration of people who are on the same level.
Mm-hmm. And how do you evaluate your own success?
Well, as a runner, obviously I have my watch, right? So I can see how fast or how slow I am. In the business world, I think when I get testimonials from my clients, I have one client and I think we talked about dreams, and she quit her job and now she writes a book, right? And she not only has written one book, I think she's working on a trilogy. And she sent me a message, thanks to you, I'm fulfilling my dream and I'm very happy. So I think this is really a success story for me when I see people really thriving and working on their successes.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying to us that, you evaluate it by seeing how others are changing their life in a positive ways.
I think so. Yeah, it's changing them and their happiness and that they are fulfilled with what they're doing. So it's little steps, and little steps can lead to big successes.
Mm-hmm. And what is your mission in life?
My mission in life is think like the pro, but also be the pro. So I want to give my best all the time. Maybe I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but I like to give my best, and I like to give my best to the people that I work with.
Any final thoughts?
I think it's for the people who are listening, just follow your dreams, have many dreams, be ready when that opportunity comes around, and grab those opportunities. So I think it's about networking, it's finding the right people, maybe find a mentor, and good luck with all the great opportunities that are coming around, and don't be afraid.
And how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, I love to hear from everybody. So actually, my website has all the information. So it's SusanneMueller.biz, and I will spell it out for you. S as in Sam, U as in under, S as in Sam, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, E as in Edward, M as in Mary, U as in under, E as in Edward, L as in Larry, L as in Larry, E as in Edward, R as in Robert, dot biz, and that's B as in boy, I as in India, C as in zebra. Love to hear from everybody. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter. I have a weekly blog, and my book can be found on Amazon. So take it from the Iron Woman, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. I'm happy to hear from you, and I hope I hear from many. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Susanne. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show. Remember that you're all leaders in your own rights, and the impact that you're meant to achieve starts with small acts of kindness, curiosity, and generosity. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and until next time.